so cute. He's so baby girl. He really is. So baby girl. Baby girl Shinji. Girls Shinji. Magical girl Shinji. Recently, I rewatched this little anime from the 90s that you may have heard of called Neon Genisis Evangelion. It is a story about some men trying to destroy the world and some men trying to control the world, and a lot of people thinking that they're trying to save the world, but more importantly, it is about one boy who believes he only deserves to be loved and exist if he can be useful, learning to find self-worth and love himself for who he is. At least, that's what the series is about. And then End of Eva comes in and throws all of that out the window, flips you off, and then commits seppuku on the floor right after you got the carpet cleaned. I don't like End of Evangelion. I watched it once and wish never to watch it again. Anyway, my spouse and I recently binged the series, and I got hit with the idea of turning Shinji into a magical girl and thought it sounded fun, so that's what we're doing today. A few things before I get started. This design is based solely on Shinji from the 1995 series. While I plan to read the manga and watch the Rebuild movies someday, I haven't gotten to those yet. I'm also going to talk a bit about my thoughts and feelings about the series, of which there is a lot. I'll try to manage myself. And when we get there, I will give spoiler warnings because the original ending is something that I have lots of feelings about and thoughts on. Obviously, this will just be my interpretation and subjective opinion. One of the great things about Eva is that there's so much room for interpretation and individual analysis because of how unplanned it was in the process of being created and developed. Something that is reflected in the many flaws of the show, but also in how raw and compelling it can be. And those are kind of some of my favorite parts, but again, I'll get into all of that stuff later. For now, let us actually get to designing Shinji as a magical girl. So the first thing I did is the first thing I do with any art project. I grabbed my sketchbook to start brainstorming ideas. The one thing I kind of knew from the start was that I wanted him to be in this big poofy skirt. That felt important to his character. Other than that, I wasn't exactly sure what direction to go in, so I started by looking at Shinji's pilot suit thing and picking out elements from it to either include or expand. This included his hair clips, the vest part, and the gloves with the large cuffs around the wrist. His hair clips were almost immediately turned into these cat ear shapes because I thought it was both funny and cute, but the shape language matched pretty well with the rest of the design in the end, so it was a nice little happy accident. The chest thing turned into actual armor with a gem in the center meant to reflect his power, and I added shoulder armor, solidifying a knight theme that I really liked and worked really well for this design. I played around with the cuffs of his gloves coming up to different parts of his arms, but ultimately stuck with the original-ish version and even turned them into his main weapon. More on that later. Honestly, the top half of his design was pretty solid from the beginning. It didn't really change all that much as I kept drawing him. The bottom half, I definitely struggled with. I knew I wanted him in a skirt, but what kind of skirt, and was that truly the best option? I tried a round bubble skirt, a fluffy skirt, a more ballet-styled skirt, and even shorts, but none of these were feeling right. It was also almost midnight and my eyes were getting heavy, so I went to bed. In the morning, I came back to it and almost immediately drew this pleated skirt with a poofy underskirt that was perfect. It looks so cute and worked really well with the armored skirt pieces I added on top. Actually, both the skirt armor and the boots were inspired by the Eva robot design from the show. As I was brainstorming, I was curious if there was anything from the robots that I could incorporate, and I think the features of the Evas that stand out the most are their silhouettes. I had already added the points on his shoulder armor to imitate the shoulders of the Eva Unit 1. What else could I borrow? I had added the skirt armor to try to mimic the insane hip bone shape of the Eva, and while I liked the armored skirt, the angled shapes weren't working here, so I actually moved it down to be part of his shoes, and that led to these awesome armored boots that I can't draw very well, but I'm still very happy with. I like the overall look. I really like how it brings the whole thing together with the mecha ears, chest armor, skirt armor, and boots all matching and complementing each other. It's probably one of the more cohesive things I've designed. It was kind of funny. For his shoes, I kept trying to give him like thigh highs and garters because I like those, and then I would look at them on him and they're they're too sexy for him. It just doesn't look great. Like, maybe after he grows up and transitions, he'll be able to pull them off. Anyway, another idea I got from the Eva was adding an angel theme to Shinji's design, which was where the halo came from. I played around with giving him wings too, but ditched the idea pretty early. Maybe when he uses the power of friendship to unleash his ultimate attack, the wings can appear. I think that would look pretty cool. At this point, the design was pretty much done, but there was still one thing missing. Whether or not to give him an actual weapon. Like, he is a magical girl, they can kind of just pull power out of their ass, so a specific weapon is kind of optional, but I still wanted an idea of what his attacks and fighting style could look like. In the show, the only real unique weapon that I know of is the Spear of Longinus, and I feel like in this Magical Girl AU, the spear would be a very special item that they are searching for or something. Like, it would be kind of a MacGuffin-y kind of thing. It would be special and not just the automatic weapon of one of the characters, I feel like. With Shinji's whole knight thing, I also thought about a sword and shield, but that felt kind of boring and a bit too obvious. I wasn't really happy with that idea either. Then I was talking with my partner and spitballing, and I had the idea of expanding on the halo and actually making it so that each magical girl has a specific type of power and unique ways that it manifests. Shinji would be light, nice and simple, and could have these rings of light that appear around his wrists. He could use them for hand-to-hand combat as both offensive and defensive maneuvers, as well as charge up and send these little blasts out from his wrists. And as he grows and learns how to use these powers, he could continue to find new ways to manipulate them, making him very versatile, which I do think is one of his strengths in the show. I already know that if I expand this and make the other characters into magical girls, Asuka would be fire, Rei would be ice, Kaoru would be darkness, and Toji would be earth. Nothing too grand here, elemental powers are pretty common in everything that has magic, but you know, if it works, it works. Since I was giving Shinji light powers, when I colored it, I did make his accent color yellow instead of red, like in his original design, which, thank goodness, because I didn't really want his main colors to be red, white, and blue, and accidentally look like an American flag magical girl. That's just not Shinji. That's not what I want Shinji to be. Other than that, I made the armor parts white, the gloves and skirt blue, and added yellow to the arm ribbons and the gem. And then his bodysuit part is also black. I decided on the colors at the end once I actually started coloring it, but before that I of course just did the penciling, and then I used my G pen and some Black Star Waterproof India ink by Dr. P.H. Martin's, the one that specifically says high carb on it. That is the ink that I currently use, and it seems to work great. I also used a brush to fill in some of the black areas, and then I did watercolors for the main colors, which was fun and worked very nicely this time. The last video I did where I did watercolors, I was struggling, and it was kind of my own fault for not doing any research or practice or anything. That's fine. It was practice, but I don't know. I learned from it, and that is the important part. Since that video, I did also get this like cheat sheet for mixing watercolors together, and gosh, that thing would have been so useful last time. Again, live and learn. I didn't use it. I used it a little bit on this project, mainly for picking out the blue and figuring out the color of Shinji's hair. Even if I didn't use it that much, it's still a handy little thing, and I'm glad I have it. It only cost a couple bucks at Michael's. So, I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of nervous to talk about the show because I want to. I want to share some of my thoughts. I don't have enough people to talk to, and I have many thoughts. My brain is always buzzing. But it's also Neon Genesis Evangelion, a show that's been analyzed to death and had a huge impact on the anime industry, and everyone has opinions on it, and having opinions that other people may not agree with and sharing them on the internet is kind of scary, but I still have thoughts, and I want to share them. It's also kind of weird timing because another show that became unexpectedly popular just ended in a way where people are having totally normal feelings about it. One that even referenced Evangelion, that was made by a small group of people, and because it was a more intimate, personal story, it didn't go the way a lot of people were expecting it. And everyone is being completely normal about these little small-scale series exploring the messiness of human existence, and then making an internet about it when it doesn't go the way that they want. I don't know, I just can't help but notice some of the parallels in reactions, although I do think Digital Circus's ending is much more cohesive than Ava's. Anyway, I'm gonna start by talking about what I like about the series in general, without spoilers on the ending, and then my interpretation of the ending, and then what I wish End of Evangelion had been. I will, of course, give a warning and a timestamp before I talk about spoiler stuff, if you don't want to be spoiled for this series. At the very top of my best things about Ava list sit two things: the opening and Shinji Ikari. I don't think I need to even say much about the opening. A Cruel Angel's Thesis is literally one of the best anime openings ever. The song absolutely slaps, and the timing of the cuts during the bridge and the chorus are excellent, especially when you remember that this was done in the 90s when they had to time the images manually. Like, I just started to teach myself animation, and the modern tools that we have now, like video editors and multimedia art programs like Clip Studio Paint, really make things like animation so much more accessible and malleable. It's crazy. So thinking about how people had to make the same kinds of media manually is just something I've really started to think about when watching older stuff. It's really fascinating. My main point is that the opening is awesome, both for the song and the visuals and the editing in particular. I've probably already made this pretty clear, but I love Shinji, and sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. Now, I became attached to Shinji in a very specific way. The first time I watched the series was probably 3 to 4 years ago when I was in the middle of what I now recognize as a multi-year-long experience of burnout and depression. I was just not really in a good spot, and sometimes I feel like I'm still working my way out of that. I had had a lot of hardships in rather quick succession, making me feel like a failure and lost on what to do next with my life. I'm someone who really likes having a goal to strive for, so not having one left me feeling wayward and apathetic, and I went through my weeks just going to my part-time job and wallowing in my feelings. It was in this state of mind that one afternoon I turned on Netflix and decided to give that anime I've heard so much about a try, and was almost immediately hooked on it. Something about the subdued nature of the series really pulled me in, and episode 4, which is probably the most quiet and boring episode for a lot of people, is my favorite because of how it is able to express Shinji's feelings of loneliness and melancholy and self-loathing in such, how do I put it, in such an artistic way, I guess? And it made me finally understand my little brother in a way I never could before. It made me understand that no matter how much I love him, no matter how much I tried to be there for him, it couldn't help him because he didn't love himself. He didn't believe he deserved to be loved, and so he rejected it, and eventually he left. This was one of the hardships I had experienced and was leaving me feeling like a failure. I just kept wondering what I could have done differently to be there for him. Watching Evangelion, I wanted so badly for someone to accept and love Shinji for who he was, to save him from the story he was trapped in, even though it was impossible because he's the main character. The narrative demands that he stays, no matter how many times he tries to leave. He is forced into these traumatizing experiences, playing the role of a hero against his will, and then demeaned for his soft-hearted nature and resistance to being a tool of violence. He is so constantly manipulated and criticized by others around him, even ones who care about him like Masato, that no wonder he wants so desperately to run away and hide from all of those cruelties. But deep down, he's also just a kid who needs kindness and care. I also can't help but relate to him as a fellow people pleaser. Shinji gets yelled at for it so many times, but he is someone who values other people's needs and feelings above his own, and I am the exact same way. I have made really big life decisions for the sake of other people. Multiple times. More than anything, I adore Shinji's kindness, even when he thinks it's rooted in selfishness, because the reason for being kind doesn't matter, only the action and goodness that comes from it. Like, there are several times in the show where characters tell Shinji that he has a choice about getting in the Eva and fighting or not, but the choice is only a choice if you don't value human life and other people. Either fight and try to save people, or do nothing and let everyone die. That is not much of a choice if you are any kind of decent person. Everyone around him, and especially his father Gendo, specifically take advantage of the fact that Shinji cares about people and is a good person who will do the right thing when left with no other option, despite the fact that it deeply hurts and terrorizes him. And this is why Gendo is the main villain of the series, and I will not be taking questions on that. Fuck that guy. Shinji's mom has terrible taste in men, just like all the women in the series. Except Shinji. Shinji is a woman who has great taste in men. Anyway, I also like Masato. I think she's fun and hot and a badass. Shame about the daddy issues, but it just kind of comes with the show. I kind of just like how the show looks, especially the character designs and the color palettes. I'm not really into robots, so I don't care too much about the Evas, but I do appreciate how they were different from everything that had come up before and made like that impact. I think that's cool. I also have a very specific love for things where I can see through the seams of the product and understand how it was put together or how shortcuts were used. Thinking about how creators worked around limitations to create meaning within their medium, I eat that shit up. Eva is kind of infamous for this because the show was being created by a bunch of unmanaged nerds who were more or less creating the show episode by episode and pretty bad with managing themselves and money and time, and they were doing anything they could to cut corners. This is why there are a lot of shots that get reused or uncomfortably long still shots, or why the ending is the way it is, but it ends up just becoming part of the style and voice of the show. Okay, spoiler warning time. From here, I am going to start talking about the end of the show and the end of Eva movie, so if you want to skip those parts, jump ahead to this timestamp here. I'll give you a few seconds if you need it. Right, so the last two episodes of Evangelion are kind of nonsensical. It informs us that the turn everything back into primordial soup project has begun, and the world is ending, and we're only gonna have time to explore the psyche of one character while this is happening, which is, of course, our baby girl Shinji. Personally, I never really cared all that much about the main plot, quote unquote, on that of the show because it's kind of hard to follow, and more than anything, it's just a question of which group of men in power is going to get what they want in the end. Gendo, who's trying to become God, or Sire, who wants to unify humanity by becoming soup, neither of which is a good option. These are, to me, the villains of the story. No, the part that I care about is the thematic message of the show and the emotional arc of Shinji and the rest of the cast, all of which are tied together. Basically, the thematic message is what the story is trying to say, of which there could be more than one, as well as room for interpretation. Pretty much as long as you have evidence to support your reading, there can be a message for it. Oftentimes, it will be concluded and crystallized in the finale along with everything else. Makes sense, it's the crux of the story after all. To me, the thematic message of Evangelion is that a person's right to love and existence is not a conditional one, and everyone deserves to exist for the sake of existing. You don't have to earn your right to live, you don't have to be useful to others to deserve love and acceptance. You just need to love and accept yourself and try your best to love and accept others in return. And that message is the character arc that Shinji goes on and completes by the end of the series. Like, everyone knows and points at how weird the last shot of everyone Shinji knows clapping and telling him congratulations, but I'm clapping right there with them because these are not actually those characters. They are Shinji's view of those characters. This moment is all in Shinji's head, and it happens directly after he chooses to accept that even though sometimes it hurts, he still wants to live in a world with other people and accept himself as he is. All the people clapping are a reflection of him and his decision to stop assuming that everyone hates him because he hates himself, and instead take people as they are, including himself. He starts to take the first steps to love himself, and I think that's beautiful. And then End of Eva just retcons all of that character growth, and Uno reverses it so that he and everyone else becomes their worst selves instead. And Shinji's character arc is just flushed down the toilet, and the thematic message becomes everyone sucks, and it feels so grim and pessimistic and bitter, and I hate what it does with Shinji. Why did they make him do that? It also sucks that the movie has some amazing animation and some of the most iconic shots in anime, but I just can't get past the story and the character assassinations that it does, and it reads more like a rewrite of the last 2 episodes than a proper sequel. But at the same time, you can't really understand what is happening in the finale without that movie. It's just such a mess. Since we finished it, my spouse and I have been talking a lot about the show off and on. This was actually their first time watching it, and they definitely didn't like it as much as I did, but they also said it was better than they expected it to be. They haven't watched End of Eva yet, but I have told them what happens and why I don't like it, and through that conversation, I actually came up with an alternate version that I would have preferred, and obviously, this is just my thoughts, and doesn't actually change the version that exists, but it's fun to brainstorm. To start, I wouldn't change the last 2 episodes much. I like its abstraction and the result that came about because no one at Gainax knows how to manage time or money, but I would like to add some clarification to what I think is happening. These clarifications are things that I would also add to the show if I could. Again, this is just my interpretation. The way I see it is that Sire has started their Everyone is Soup project, and now everyone on the planet is going through the same exploration of their psyche that Shinji is going through in their own minds. I actually think it's really cool how the breakdown of the animation itself echoes how the individual self and the body are breaking down at the same time in the show. I think that's really cool. As everyone faces themselves, they are left with a choice. They can either disappear into nothing, becoming soup, or they can accept themselves and choose to live despite the pain and complications of existing as individuals. The first time I watched the last episode of Eva, this is actually what I thought happened. I thought that Shinji decided that he wanted to keep living and to value himself, and that saved the world and somehow stopped the project, and this is more or less how I would rewrite End of Eva. Obviously, I would not have that scene with Shinji and Asuka, and I definitely would not have Misato kissing Shinji and promising to have sex with him if he saves the world. I don't care if it was an act of desperation, I don't like that, it's gross. But everything else would more or less play out as normal until it gets back to the exploration of everyone's psyche. Instead of everyone becoming instant soup, I think everyone would be faced with the same choice as Shinji: to disappear and forever become soup, or to stay as an individual person. And we would get to see where everybody ends up, at least of the cast. Shinji obviously would be not soup. All the Sita guys, soup. Asuka, soup. Gendo, soup. Retsuko, soup. All of the Nerve secondary characters, not soup, except the guy with the long hair. Do I have a reason for that? No. Misato, not soup. Shinji's classmates, also not soup. It would still be a tragic and fucked up ending and leave the world in ruins, but it would not be so pessimistically bleak as the movie is, and more importantly, it reflects and continues the thematic message of the show, essentially asking who is willing to accept life despite the hedgehog's dilemma. There's even a part at the end of the third to last episode when Shinji is wishing he had died instead of Kaoru, and Misato tells him that he's wrong because only people who want to live should survive, which I don't agree with that mentality in the larger scheme of things, but in the framework of the show, it continues to support the themes and messages of overcoming one's self-loathing and accepting each other as they are. We would still see Shinji on that beach, with Rei's giant smiling head in the background, standing alone as he stares out at the new Human Soup Club. Misato and the few remaining Nerve employees spot him and call out to him. Shinji turns. Misato and Shinji share a look for a few minutes, until Shinji gives the first genuine smile we've ever seen and says, "Tadaima, I'm home." After a beat, Misato smiles back and responds, "Okaeri, welcome back." And that is the end of my spiel. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. This is so stupid. Okay, I kind of need to wrap this up because I'm moving across the country next week and need to finish this video and finish packing. There's so much to do. To summarize, I love Shinji, and I think he makes a really good magical girl, and this was actually a lot of fun to make. I really like it. I do already have ideas for magical girl versions of the other pilots as well, so I might do more in the future if my attention holds long enough. Do let me know if you're interested or you have ideas for the other characters. I'm still kind of brainstorming themes for them. Like I said, I am about to move, so I probably won't post a new video for a little bit. I'm hoping to keep that time frame under a month, but we'll see. I also need to look for a job, and once I get one, I won't have as much time to work on videos. However, this was the end of the YouTube challenge I was doing, and I managed to create 7 out of the 9 videos I had intended to do in a month, and that's still crazy and helped me learn a lot about how to use my new video editor and testing different editing styles. It's been a good time, even with my little hiccup last week. Either way, I'll be back, and if you like this video or want to see more of my stuff, like and comment and subscribe, do all the YouTube things. You know how it goes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a good day, week, whatever, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Also, Shinji being a trans girl who doesn't know that she's trans yet is totally canon to me.